Welcome back to another episode of The Positive Perspective. I'm your host, Kirsten Turner. I want to talk about something today that I don't think we talk about enough. And it's this strange thing that can happen when you sort of finally let yourself be truly honest about what it is that you want. I think we hear all the time, dream big, get clear on your vision, and write down your goals. And that's great until you actually do it. And what I mean by that is like not those goals of like, I want this job title and I want to make this much money, but the ones where you like really kind of let yourself go there. This is what do you want for your life to look like? How do you want to feel every day? What do you want your relationships to feel like? How do you want your appearance to look? What's your health like? And instead of feeling excited when you start thinking about those things or writing those things down, you actually feel upset. You feel discouraged. You might even feel like you've failed somehow because what happens is now all of a sudden you can see the gap. Yeah, you can see where you are and you can see where you want to be. And that distance can feel heavy. So, what's interesting is that this is often where people sort of stop. So, if they start to see that and it doesn't feel good, or it feels too far away, sometimes it's just easier to then just turn a blind eye to it. So today I want to talk about acceptance because acceptance plays a really big role in how we respond to those sort of insights, to that clarity. And I remember having this experience, realizing that the things I wanted were not on my current path, which meant having to completely pivot in some areas while not even knowing where to start in others. I also remember knowing that it was important to be grateful for the things I have and where I was, but I was finding that really challenging to do when faced with everything that I wanted, right? With faced of that future clarity of this is where I want to go or where I want to be or the relationships I want to have. It felt like this weird paradox. I want all those things, which is so much change from where I am right now. How on earth then does it make sense for me to be grateful for where I currently am if it's not what I want? And that one really tripped me up for a bit. But I finally came to the realization that I can be grateful for everything that had brought me to that moment. And as I slowly started to change my attitude, I could see how many things I truly was grateful for. And it became part of my practice to help me enjoy the journey to my ever expanding wants and desires. So gratitude is certainly a key part, but I don't want to ignore the fact that there is this paradox of like trying to figure that out as you're starting to open up and allow yourself to be honest with where it is that you want to go, what I call your sort of point B. So if you look at this through a neuroscience lens, though, a lot of this makes sense. So when you suddenly acknowledge that you're not where you want to be, your brain can interpret that as threat. And research has shown that the same parts of the brain that activate when we experience physical pain also activate when we experience threats to our identity. So when you realize, wow, I'm further away than I thought, or I'm not who I want to be, or, any of those things, this is where people can sort of unknowingly turn against themselves. And what I mean by that is sort of the thoughts that start to happen is they can start judging themselves, questioning themselves, or just stop dreaming altogether because it's just easier not to see it or to think about it. So there's this principle called the law of acceptance, and it's an important one to understand. It's basically the understanding that you cannot sustainably change something that you are unwilling to accept. Acceptance doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you're resigning yourself to it. It simply means you're no longer fighting the reality of where you are. So fighting it doesn't move you forward, right? Obviously, it just sort of keeps you stuck longer. Carl Rogers said something beautiful. He said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. So what he's talking about, just as I am, is that you accept where your wants and desires are too. You accept where you currently are. It's this acceptance of you as a person and where you are with no judgment, right? And when you do that, it actually allows you to change. That's the part that can sort of feel confusing. A lot of us believe that in order to change, we have to be harder on ourselves, right? We got to push ourselves. We need to be dissatisfied in order to make change happen. And then for growth to continue because we're scared of complacency. And if we're happy with where we are or whatever, then we're not going to continue. So there's this other side of this. But real lasting change actually happens when your nervous system feels safe, not when it feels under attack, which is what we're doing to ourselves when we have all of those other kinds of thoughts. So I think one of the most important things to understand is that seeing the gap is not the problem. Seeing the gap is simply awareness. And awareness is sort of the beginning of everything, right? That's how you can change something. You can't move towards a life you can't see. But there is a difference between seeing the gap and then making the gap mean something about you. And that's what a lot of us do unintentionally. It's because if you can see the gap and it doesn't mean anything, except it's just information, well, that can create movement, right? But if it means something about you and where you currently are, well, that's going to create feelings of shame, maybe feelings of failure, like you name it, right? Anything can come up. And those feelings are usually what shut us down. Whereas acceptance feels a lot more like opening up. So I'd like to explain law of acceptance in more depth, as I believe it's a core to lasting change. So really at the foundation, the law of acceptance says this: you must accept something as it is before you can change your relationship with it. So it's not because acceptance locks things in place, sort of as I was mentioning, right? But it's because acceptance brings you back into your relationship with reality. And reality is the only place where change can actually occur. When you resist reality, you separate yourself from it. When you accept it, you can work with it. So think of it like trying to navigate a map, right? If you refuse to acknowledge your actual location and then insist you are somewhere else, the map is obviously it's useless, right? Acceptance is the moment you sort of put the pin exactly where you are standing. And then from there, every direction becomes available. Without that pin, you're just wandering around the neighborhood, not sure of all the paths available to you and where it can take you. So it's very important to know our point A and our point B. And what we're talking about today is acceptance of where our point A is. So the law of acceptance is often considered foundational because it stabilizes the other laws. So I'll give you an example. Law of attraction. Most of us know law of attraction, but basically what it says is that life around you responds to what you energetically embody. So if underneath your visions and your life and everything that you want lies, I shouldn't be here, resistance. This isn't fair, resistance. I hate this part of my life, resistance. You're creating this internal conflict. And what acceptance does, it actually resolves a lot of that conflict because you're allowing yourself, this is where I'm at. This is how my relationship is. This is how life is. It's this kind of just, all right, all right. I've got it. I can take it from here. It creates this coherence, and coherence is what allows things to move, change, and grow. So I think people can get tripped up thinking that acceptance means that they're accepting their life as it is, and then there's nothing they can do about it. But acceptance doesn't mean that you like it. It doesn't mean that you approve of it, and it doesn't mean you want it forever. It simply means you stop arguing with the fact that it exists, whatever it is, right? That reality in your life. And you stop spending energy pretending it isn't there. You stop layering other feelings as well, like shame or guilt, which is really what that does, is just create a second layer of suffering. So there's this famous quote from psychiatrist Carl Jung, and he said, "What you resist persists." And I think of this as like whatever's going on inside, if you think of it like a little child, and if you resist it and you ignore it and you don't listen to what it's saying and you don't talk to it, usually it has two responses. One is to get louder and louder until you do listen, or to curl up in a ball and hide, go all the way deep down and hide. Does it ever go away? No. No, it doesn't. Neither of them do until you accept what they're trying to say, and you face it, right? So there's also this. So yes, okay, sorry. So I just wanted to cover that. The other thing is that acceptance is actually the thing that accelerates change. So there's this paradox that most people believe: if I accept this, I'm going to stay stuck here. And I sort of mentioned that, right, by saying like we have this sort of drive in society that's like, well, I can't accept this. I've got to go for more. I want to do more and all this. So if I accept where I'm at right now, well, then I'm just going to get comfortable. So we kind of talked about that. But the opposite is usually what happens because resistance creates so much emotional friction. It literally drains our energy, mental energy, all. And sort of acceptance, though, it allows you to release that energy. And that energy then becomes available for something else, for change. It's almost like if you opened up your bank account and saw the number. The number might not be what you want it to be, but ignoring it doesn't change it. Judging yourself for it doesn't change it. And accepting it just simply gives you that starting point, that point A. And from there, now you can move. Now you can make decisions, and now you have power. Resistance often feels like this shouldn't be happening, right? Whereas acceptance feels a lot more like this is happening, now what? One keeps you sort of stuck in the past, but the other kind of opens up for future possibilities. On a deeper level, the law of acceptance is about this non fragmentation. So, suffering comes from rejecting parts of your reality or parts of yourself, whereas acceptance reintegrates those parts. It creates this like internal wholeness. I accept me for who I am. I'm okay with the person that I am. I know where I want to go and I'm excited. And that wholeness allows you to take like aligned action, and it doesn't feel forced or panicked. It feels aligned and it feels like just who you truly are, much more freeing. So let's look at a real life example. So, someone who's unhappy in their career but refuses to accept it, right? So, they may numb out, complain, or avoid thinking about it. So, years pass, nothing changes. Whereas someone who accepts it and goes, I'm not fulfilled here. That acceptance might hurt. It's not going to feel good. And now they know it. So change has to happen. And that change can be scary. And again, that could go right down to identity, right? I think I'm this person who's been doing this career for how long? And all of a sudden now it's like, that's not the case. But it does, what this does is create clarity. And from clarity, someone then can decide what to do about it. So the simplest way to remember it is acceptance is not an endpoint, it's the starting point. And from the neuroscience perspective, when you accept where you are, your nervous system settles, the threat response calms down, and the part of your brain responsible for decision making, creativity, and change all comes back online. When you're in self judgment, though, your brain is in protection mode, not growth. We can't grow and be trying to protect ourselves. So you can't build from self rejection, but you can from self acceptance. So this is acceptance of your reality, but also of yourself. So that's really the part I want you to hopefully walk away from with this episode. So if you've ever been in that space where you've seen what you want and instead of feeling inspired, you felt discouraged, I want you to understand something. That's completely normal. It's completely natural. And what this shows is that you've given birth to a number of desires. And that is literally what our life is, right? Deciding what you don't want, deciding what you do want, and going after it. And then once you get it, newsflash, but more desires will be born, and that's really never ending. So the idea is to lean into what will make you happy, baby steps over time, and know that you will always desire something new or more, and that is wonderful. Just practice also being grateful for where you are now and how much you've already accomplished and overcome. So instead of asking yourself questions like, how did I get here? Why am I so far behind? Try asking yourself, can I accept that this is where I am right now without making it mean something about your worth or your capability? Just, this is where I am. Because acceptance doesn't remove your desire, it removes the resistance that's blocking you from moving towards it. And the version of you that creates the life you want is not the version that hated where you started. It's the version that accepted where you were and then just kept going. So it's about not giving up. It's about stepping onto that sort of solid ground. And from there, you can go anywhere. Thank you so much for being here and spending your time with me today. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And as always, keep choosing the positive perspective.